Digital photography made simple.
Hello again and welcome back to Digital 1-to-1. On this segment, we're going to be discussing a setting on our cameras known as the auto exposure lock. The auto exposure lock function lets us measure the amount of light and lock in that measurement so we can use that exposure to another shot. Basically, we point our camera in one direction, take a measurement of that exposure, and then we point our camera to where we want our shot by using that actual exposed measurement. Now, it only works in the program mode and the manual modes and does not work in the auto mode function. The auto exposure lock setting may become your best friend the next time you need to make a quick change to your exposure before taking your shot.
Now, auto exposure lock, or AEL, doesn't always activate the same in every camera. In fact, some manufacturers don't even give you that setting until you get to a pro camera. Here on Digital 1-to-1, we like to guide you in using your settings creatively. The auto exposure lock is not hard to understand or to use. We recommend that you have auto exposure lock on your camera. So next time you go and shop for a new camera, make sure that you have this feature.
Now we're going to demonstrate how the auto exposure lock feature works. By attaching our camera to our video camera, we're going to be able to see the back of the screen here, and you're going to see how the auto exposure lock feature is activated and watch us measuring the lights and dark tones of our image. Okay, so we got our camera on our camera mount attached to our video camera. So now we're going to be able to move our camera around as if you're taking the shot yourself. We're going to take our shot first in the auto mode setting. So let's just get a focus lock and get our shot. We're going to take our camera out of the auto mode function and put it in manual mode. And we're going to see here that we now have the ability to work with our auto exposure lock. And the way we get to it on this particular camera is you'll see we hit our shutter halfway down, and then with our other finger we come in and hit the ISO button. And now you'll see on the right hand side that the auto exposure lock letters have shown up on our screen to let us know that we've now locked in the exposure that our camera is pointing to. Now in our auto mode shot, we felt that the shot of Santino was a little too dark, so we actually want to brighten it up. And now we're going to use the auto exposure lock feature to do so without using any other feature of the camera. Again, we're in manual, but let's take the auto exposure lock off from where we were originally, and we're going to point it a little over to something a little darker than he. And you can actually see the darker I go, how the back of the camera starts to brighten, and you can see that's an exposure that I can use with him, but that might be too bright. So I'm going to go to something slightly darker than where he's standing, and we're going to focus in on that, and we're going to hit our ISO button. Now we bring back into play and reshoot our shot with the auto exposure lock. Now, if we want to actually make our exposure darker, what we're going to do is we're going to take our camera and we're going to point to something lighter. And we're going to have our exposure lock set there. And now we bring it back in and we take our shot with that setting. And now we have our darker exposure using the auto exposure lock feature. We don't have to physically stand in the same spot like we just showed you moving side to side. We can physically move in. And for instance, with Santino, he's wearing an outfit that's black and white. I want to make him brighter. I'm going to move in and focus a little bit on the black part of his clothing. So I come in and get a good portion of the black shirt in the camera, hit my shutter halfway down, and then set my auto exposure lock feature. I now can step back to where I was before and shoot my picture in a brighter image. It'll work the same way if I was to use the auto exposure lock feature on his white shirt, which will make my image darker. This is one of the wonderful things about this tool and why we want you to know this.
This feature is a great tool, and it can be used in many lighting situations. It allows us to be more creative in changing the mood and ambiance of a photograph, and that's what makes a great image. Now, one point to remember about the auto exposure lock is that when you change your focal length, it will automatically turn your AEL off. So we encourage you to experiment with this auto exposure lock, because that's how you become a digital 1-to-1 photographer.
And for the best tips on digital photography, look to us here on Digital 1-to-1.